So welcome to our fourth LAS Zoom meeting. Nice to have some new faces and some faces who we've had in the group but haven't actually appeared on Zoom before, but they're here tonight, so that's good to see Michael. And we have a Lincolnshire contingent here with Andy and Russ, where they have the clear skies when we don't have them, like tonight, for example.
Well, Russ does, I don't.
Just to give the people who are new here just a bit of background, I tend to do this when we have a few new people in. We've been going a year now. We started off a year ago, October 2019, and the idea was to actually go out on field trips, and then COVID struck. So it stopped us going on field trips, but we've sort of taken over with Zoom meetings instead of having physical meetings, and they're working quite well, really. And we've had a few talks by different people in the group, and some of them have been on astronomy and some of them have been on processing astro shots. So we're getting a variety of things. We have some real experts in the group, not all of whom are here tonight, but we have some really good people. And it's basically just a friendly self-help group to help everybody out, get some nice shots and do some astronomy. So that's what it's all about. And so tonight what we're going to do is start off with Paul giving us a little bit of the what's in the night sky information, just for 10 minutes or so. But the main presentation later will be from Andy, who's going to show us how he uses Cyril. And like I say, it's being recorded, so you can go back and have a look at this later if you don't catch all of it at the time. So without further ado, it's over to Paul.
So here we go with the December night sky. And here we have a typical night sky for us. It's not very dark, neither is it 100% clear. As you can see, there's some clouds there and there's the ISS going past. And being December, you have other passes that you might find more difficult to observe. Anybody who gets a photograph of that on December the 24th gets a special prize. So whilst we're thinking about the moon, the first thing we think about the moon really is because we want it not to be there. And I thought I'd just talk a little bit about what the month's pattern is regarding the moon. This is 10 o'clock on Sunday the 6th, this coming Sunday. So the waning moon rises on Sunday at 10 o'clock. So you've actually got 4 or 5 hours of darkness, should it happen to be clear, where things like Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, and even Taurus are available to you in beautiful darkness. That's the beauty of this time of year. And then very rapidly we get more and more darkness available to us as the middle of the month approaches. And by next Wednesday, the moon rises at almost 1 a.m. So you've got 7 hours roughly of darkness available to you for astronomy, taking you right up through to Orion and Geminid and Auriga and constellations like that. Who could ask for more? Well, we could ask for clear skies, couldn't we? So really, with December this year, the middle of the month is good for astrophotography. Talking now about times when we might like to see the moon, Saturday the 12th of December is one of those times when the moon is actually in the morning sky. The 7.5% illuminated waning crescent moon is actually just above and to the right of Venus, which actually should look very nice, should it chance to be clear. I have to stop saying that, really. Whilst we're on that screen, just a word about Venus. Venus is actually moving eastwards very rapidly along, obviously behind the sun, along a steeply angled bit of the ecliptic. So although the superior conjunction of Venus, when it's on the far side of the sun, is not until March, it's actually going to get quite hard to observe as this month goes on, and in the first few months of next year, it's going to be quite hard to observe at all. So really, the next few weeks is to all intents and purposes the end of the road for Venus. If you're talking about photographing Venus, it's not terribly interesting at the moment anyway, because it's become quite a big gibbous phase. It's quite a long way away and it's quite small. So, it's drawing really towards the other side of the sun. So really the Venus season this year, which it's been a really, really good year for Venus this year, and it's pretty much drawing to a close. Now I have to move my screen out of the way so that I can actually see what I've written. A few more things about the moon. New moon is on the 14th. When the narrow crescent of the waxing crescent becomes available to us in the sky, in the evening sky, it's actually very, very low down at this time of year. It's traveling through Sagittarius and Capricornus. On the 17th, there's a thin waxing crescent moon, 11% illuminated, close to Jupiter and Saturn, fairly close to them, just to the west, which should look quite nice. And Jupiter and Saturn, of course, by then will be very close indeed. First quarter is on the 21st. When it gets up to first quarter, it gets quite a lot higher in the sky. It's about 30 degrees elevation in Aquarius. And then, of course, as the month goes on, still higher and higher in the sky. On the 23rd, it'll look like this, quite nice and close to Mars in the night sky. That's probably worth observing. And then full moon is on the 30th, when, of course, it will be the longest full moon, the brightest, highest, longest full moon of the year, all night, just as it was the other night, but a bit higher in the constellation of Gemini. Mars in December is a story of it getting fainter and smaller. Can you see the zoom bit on the screen or not?
The zoom bit?
No, you can just see my screen, can you?
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway.
PowerPoint.
Anyway, so Mars in December is getting fainter and smaller. As you know, it starts off the month magnitude minus 1.1 and 14.5 seconds of the arc in diameter through a scope in photographs. By the 31st of the month, it's actually minus 0.2, which is about the same brightness as Saturn. So it's really faded a lot by the end of December. And it's gone right down to 10.35 seconds of arc, which is smaller than it ever is at opposition. So it really is getting quite small. It's also getting quite a long way west in the early evening sky and is passing the meridian by about 20 to 8 in the middle of the month. But it's moving in the sky rapidly eastwards. So it will actually, in spite of the fact that the sky is moving west all the time, Mars is catching up with it and moving east. It will be an evening object right through till next May, when it will be in Gemini and will be 4.6 seconds of arc in diameter. So it really, really becomes very faint and very small, but you can actually still see it right through to next May. So the tail end of the Mars season is always very, very long. And it seems to take forever to actually do anything, which is one of the reasons why the next Mars opposition is not till 2022. This, of course, is the biggie this coming month, and that's the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn on the 21st of December. And this is Jupiter and Saturn from Stellarium on the 21st of December at 4:30 p.m. As you can see, the names are actually superimposed. It's not going to be that easy to observe. They're going to be 10 degrees high, south of southwest at 4:30 p.m. when the sky is still not fully dark. But it's well worth looking at because they'll share the same telescopic field of view. But the window to observe them is probably about 45 minutes, all told, really, because they'll be too low after that. So we have that window to actually observe this event. This is actually there's a bit of controversy about it. It's probably the first relatively easily observable great conjunction since about the 13th century. The last one was 400 years ago, but they were so close to the sun then, it's quite possible that nobody even observed it. So this is a very, very significant event. And I must admit, if there is some clear sky in the offing, but not here, I might be very tempted to travel for it. Because, as you might expect, what we will actually see here is probably more like this. As is what happens with every astronomical rarity in Manchester. But moving swiftly on from that, we have the Geminid meteor shower on the night of the 13th, 14th. The Geminids are around for a lot longer period than that, but the maximum is just after midnight on the 14th, the early hours of the morning on the 14th. The picture shows Gemini setting in the west towards dawn, which is probably the best time to see meteors, but the actual maximum, the constellation will be much higher. You can Google a nice article on the Sky at Night website by Pete Lawrence about observing the Geminids and photographing them. His advice is don't point the camera at the radiant because you'll probably miss most of them, but point it at an area of sky about 20 to 45 degrees away. Wear your big coat, and Geek Teacher's whiskey is optional. But it's well worth looking at Pete Lawrence's article. What else was I going to say? It's actually covered by the screen, so we'll skip that. Probably the best meteor shower of the year, really. Arguable with the Perseids, but it's a darker sky and a longer opportunity to see them. And they're slow meteors which tend to leave quite bright trains, so they're actually very good for photography. It's another one where it might actually be worth getting out into a dark sky area. Don't forget the sun. I took this today when the sun was showing through some of the trees that are still in our garden. And there is that big spot, AR2786, which is just nearing the eastern limb of the sun now. And as you can see, there's a smaller spot just arriving from the western side. That's AR2790. That's already fired off quite a powerful solar flare, which of course missed the Earth because it was pointing the wrong way. But so the solar activity is generally revving up by the look of it for the new solar cycle. And I'm not going to say a lot about the constellations that are available because there isn't time, but you all know that anyway. But it's just interesting, just to finish on this note, that this is the sky at 2 AM on December the 31st. And if you look, it's actually looking very spring-like. There's Leo right, rising well up into the sky in the southeast. This is not the end of the night on the 31st, it's only 2 AM. So actually, for those of you who like to stay up all night like Mark and do nefarious things with telescopes and cameras, you can actually regard it as the beginning of spring, really, at this season. So instead of finishing in the traditional way, I'm going to wish you a happy galaxy season. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Could I just emphasize for the people who may not realize it, I'm sure there's nobody here, that to take photographs of the sun, you must always have a solar filter on. Don't try welding glass or sunglasses or anything like that. It has to be a real professional solar filter film or bought one. Yeah, okay, so thanks very much for that. Do we have any questions about that at the moment? Where would you might be thinking of driving to get a better view of the conjunction on the 21st, Paul?
I mean, I should be all right at home if it's clear, but I suppose you could go for a clearer horizon. But what I'm mainly thinking of is if it's cloudy here and there's some possibility of clarity, say the other side of the Pennines, then it might be worth tazzing over there.
I was wondering if you might be going somewhere high up though, like maybe like Rivington Pike or something like that. Or...
Yeah, that's also possible.
Yeah.
You get a longer view, of course, then potentially.
I have a question from Mark here, just popped up on the chat. Did you see it? Are there any planets available?
Any other planets? Well, Uranus and Neptune has other. You mean comets and things like that? Speak, Mark.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there are any deep sky objects or anything else other than planets and the moon.
Oh well, yeah.
Sorry, that was a joke. Yes.
No, it was really good. It was really good, Paul.
And the other thing you don't realise is that Paul just cleared his garden of trees so he could see these planets. That's with the reference to his clear spot.
2 saplings I took down.
Fab idea. Luckily, I haven't got any trees really, so I've got quite an open sky, which is quite lucky.
Oh, lovely. Jess is on the Wirral somewhere, by the way. Been a lovely spot to be doing this sort of work. Okay then. Well, sorry, go on, Jess.
Oh no, yeah, it's quite good. Apart from the glare from Liverpool,
yeah,
depending on how far across you go on the beach. So.
Well, one or two of us here are bird watchers, and the Wirral is a favourite spot, particularly the Parkgate area and Burton Marshes. and the top end. New Brighton can be good. Red Rock.
Yeah, there's loads of bird watching. What are those things that you look out? The lookouts, is it? There's a load of lookouts along the beach down there. But yeah, there's a few bird watchers around here actually.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we're ready for Andy then. Unfortunately, we can't see Andy because his video doesn't work on his laptop, but we've tested his screen sharing and that seems to work okay. So I think it's over to you now, Andy.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll just share my screen. Right, hopefully you can see that.
Yeah.
You see my screen, yeah?
Yes.
So, yeah, what I want to do is just show Cyril, which is another astronomical program. You can use it for stacking and some post-processing as well. Just a bit of background. I started astrophotography about a year ago, and I think probably like a lot of people, I was using Deep Sky Stacker, which I still quite like. I think it's still quite a nice program. Then I got a trial of Astro Pixel Processor, and that trial ran out just before lockdown really kicked in. So unfortunately, I didn't get a huge amount of time to play with it. It looked quite good. Some nice impressive parts in there. But then during lockdown, I thought, rather than buy it, I'll just have a look, see if there's any alternative open source or free bits of software that I can use and try them out before I take the plunge and buy that or PixInsight. And I came across Cyril. It's been around for a while, and it recently just had a lot more development going into it. So it looks like it had been static for some time, but over I would say the last 6 months, the developers have really poured some time and effort into it. One of the main things they've done recently is upgraded it from working on 16 bits per pixel up to 32. So now it can process, when you're doing your post-processing, you can do this at 32-bit level. But it's also gone through a UI change, so it looks better than it was. I still think the UI is probably somewhat lacking. It's not the easiest thing to use, but it does have some quite interesting tools in there that do seem to work quite well. So if you want to take a look at it, their website is just cyril.org. There are downloads at the moment. It's actually just in late beta, ready for a version 1 release. So if you get it now, you'll get the beta version. It does seem quite stable at this late stage, but you might run into some issues, until the version 1 comes out. So if I swap now to Cyril, I'll show you the interface. So this is how it looks when you first open it. It's essentially split into 2 parts. On the left-hand side, you've got this image here. Oh, well, this is where the image will show. So at the moment, obviously, we don't have an image. On the right-hand side here, you have various tabs up here at the top, which I'll go through in a second, which are the stacking tabs, so that you can do the stacking, the registration, etc. But also there is a console tab, and a bit like PixInsight, as it's processing things, it will output everything it's doing into this window here, so you can see how far it's getting through certain jobs and what processing it's doing at the time. So that will pop out as we run certain things. Across the top up here, you have there's some menus here to allow you to open FITS files. So you can go and open an existing FITS file. There is the image processing menu. So this has all the various different image processing functions listed in here. There's the script, which I'll go through later. So you can automate an awful lot of stuff. And that's where I think Cyril really comes into its own, the automation of the stacking. Now, like I say, on the right here, we've got the tabs to do the manual stacking, which is very powerful, but I also find it quite error prone. And again, I'll go through that in a second. So what I plan to do, sorry, at any point, just shout. If you've got any questions, please do shout up. So what I'm going to do initially is just show the manual stacking and show the options that are in there, but also the fact that I think it's quite clunky. So you have to, when you're doing a manual stacking like this, Cyril does not hold your hand at all. So you have to know the order of the processing you want to do. So if you've got bias and flats and lights, you need to process them in sort of the right order. Then you need to apply your biases to your flat frames and then do the processing there. Then take your flat frames and apply them to all of your light frames. Then you can do the stacking. So and at each stage, you've got many options that you can go through. But the number of times that I've done it manually, I've still got something wrong, and it is quite frustrating. So I'll quickly show you that, but then what we'll do is move on to the scripts where it suddenly becomes much easier. So initially what you have to do is you have to convert the files. So on the first tab up here, so essentially you follow these tabs across. So on the first tab, we've got conversion. So what I'll do is I'm just going to add a few bias files. So these files are all from a Canon camera. So these are all Canon RAWs. So we need to convert these to fits. So the very first thing we do is to pull in some files. We have to give it what it calls is a sequence name. And I'll go through that in a second. So what it's going to do now is it's going to convert them to fits files, and it creates what it calls a sequence file, which is essentially another file that just lists these individual frames. And Cyril works with sequence files. So when you do an operation, you typically do it on a sequence file, which then tells Cyril actually apply it to all these individual frames. So if we do a convert, you'll see it flips over to the console window. So now it's converted them, and we will have a sequence file written there, ready to go. So what we have to do then is go back. You have to flick all the way back through here, and now we need to convert, in my case, some flats. So you have to remove these and say this is where I think it really is quite clunky. So now we're going to do some flats. So if I just grab a few flats, add these in, you have to remember to change the sequence name, otherwise you overwrite it. It doesn't give you any warnings. So we'll call these flats, do the conversion. So that's now converted all our flats. Now the next step is we need to pre-process the flats with the biases. So again, you need to know where you need to go back in this sequence of tabs across the top. Oh, sorry, I'll take a step back. We actually need to stack each of these first. So you can see how confusing it gets. I'm not going to go through the whole process because it's quite painful at times. So what we need to do first is, up at the top here, we choose the sequence number that we want to play with. So here, it knows we've now got two sequences, a biases and a flats. So I'm going to select the biases, bias sequence, and then I'm going to tell it we're going to stack. There are many options depending on the stacking method you use. So there's different stacking methods, and they all come with different sets of options, many parameters, lots of stuff. So I'm going to go for average stacking with rejection. On this one, I'm just going to take the base parameters, start stacking. So now it's going to read the bias files and create as a master bias. So now we need to go do the same again for the, no we don't. See, this is where it gets confusing. So now what we need to do is apply that master bias to all of the flat files. Are you confused yet? So we take the flats. So now we're working with the flats. We need to go to pre-processing. We need to say we want to use an offset. Then we need to go and select the offset. So we've created a bias stack file here. We're going to pre-process all the flats with the bias. Hit run. Okay. And what that does is that will create now a new sequence. If I go back up here, a new sequence, which is prepended PP2. So now we've got pre-processed flats. to save boring you to death, I'm not going to go through the whole thing at this point because, like I say, this manual process I think is absolutely error prone. It doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't guide you. You've really got to know the process, that every step that you go through. And when I first started playing with this, I got really, really frustrated and gave up. But then I was reading some other articles, and I've came across this scripts functionality again, which they've improved in this latest versions. So the way I do all my stacking now is, what you need to do is just put your relevant files into a folder of a predetermined name. So put your biases into a bias folder, flats into the flats, and lights into the lights. So that's all I'm using. I don't use darks. Okay. Now Cyril comes with a load of predetermined scripts. So the one I'm going to use here is one that they've provided, which is OSC. So it's a one-shot color camera, pre-processing, but it knows that we don't have no dark. So it's going to expect to find biases, flats, and the lights. So if I just click on that, all that manual processing I was doing a minute ago is now going to be automated for me. So it's converting the biases. So convert all of them to fits files. It's created the stacked bias. So it's already, it's doing the stacking now. So we're doing the stacking. At the bottom, you can see a progress by, I don't know if you'll see this thin blue line down here, just under this stop button, but that shows you the progress of each step as it goes through. Okay, so that it's now already read the read the flats. It's now pre-processing all of the flats with the biases, and it's creating a stacked flat file.
If I could just,
so essentially, when you,
sorry, if I could just interrupt there, effectively that is
yep.
what Deep Sky Stacker does then, is you provide it with the files.
Yes.
It runs a script to process it all together for you without you having to do individual flats, biases, and darks.
Yes. Absolutely, yeah. So in the same way that Deep Sky Stacker, I think, is probably the easiest stacking program to use, because you just drag the files in, tell it what it is, tell it to run, and off it goes. I think once you use the scripts with Cyril, it becomes really quite easy. But you have to make sure that you put the files in the right location. But that's no great hardship. And then it will take over, and it will remove all this manual tedious messing about you have to do if you try and do the stacking manually. And now these scripts are just text files, and essentially they are issuing the commands that you're doing, that you would naturally be doing through the GUI. So any of the parameters that you see up when you're doing the manual process, you can apply in the script. Yeah, and thankfully Cyril provides you with a lot of quite a lot of these for mono and color and things with drizzle on that. So what I've done is I just basically use one of the standard ones that they provide, and for me it's been working really well. So often what I'll do is I'll just obviously put my files in irrelevant directories, put the script on, go make a brew, come back, and it's usually done. So at the moment now we're at the registration part. So it's pre-processed all the lights, it's pre-processed the flats, it's created the flat master. It's going to go through, do the registration, and it will be doing the stacking within a minute or so. So if I just show you in here, so I'm stacking 41 lights. There are 35 flats, and I can't remember how many biases, and 60 biases. So that's what we're stacking now. And on my laptop, it takes about 5 minutes to do that. On my home PC, I can get it down to about 2.5. So I do find Cyril remarkably quick, certainly for stacking that sort of number. And that includes converting from raw to fits. If you start off with fits, you lose some of that conversion time, so it's a little quicker.
Just to clarify,
so that should.
Sure. fits files are what you normally get out of an Astro CCD camera, CMOS camera.
Sorry, yes, that's right. Yeah.
Andy, you know,
so it does convert them to. Carry on.
Sorry, yeah, you know, when you said set up the files at the beginning, is that, do you do that once and permanently all the time? So every time you've created a new imaging session, you put them in that same files all the time, it remembers, or do you have to do it each time?
No, so what you, I missed that bit at the beginning, actually. I'll show you that in a second. But what you do is, as long as you put the files into the folders with the correct names, it doesn't matter where you put them folders with the files in, because you can tell it. You can say, right, this is the folder I want you to look at. So in my case, I've got one called Cyril Demo. So I'm saying this is the working directory, and in there you will find the folder with the biases in, with the flats and the lights. So the only thing that's really mandatory is the name of these folders that you drop your sort of raw files into. But then you can tell it. So what I do is, of my different sessions, I'll have a session, say Veil Nebula M51 or whatever, but in them folders I have the bias, flats and lights folders, which I put the stuff in. Then when it comes to processing, I just tell Cyril which of those folders to use. Yeah. So we can see now it's done all the registration. It's actually stacking the final image. So within 30 seconds or so, we should have the final image. And from my memory, when I was playing with APP, it seemed a lot slower than this. That was one thing that
Andy, that yeah, because I have played with it a little bit. Is that little home icon, top left-hand corner that's highlighted in blue, is where you set the home directory of the files you're going to work on, and then inside that directory you put your lights, flats, darks, etc. into subdirectory. And as long as it's named correctly, Cyril finds them from the home directory.
If you want to give them different folder names, you can go into the script yourself and change it within the script. It's only a text file, but you know, they're sensibly named, so I just use these.
Yeah.
So what we can see here is we've done the whole process in 5.5 minutes, and that's for quite a decent number of files. And what it does is it will then create a fits file, which is the stacked final image, and it calls it result.fit. And again, you can change that name if you go into the scripts, but its default name is result.fit. So that is our final stacked image. So my next step then is actually to do now some pre-processing inside Cyril itself. And the reason I do that is because Cyril does an awful lot of operations while the image is still linear before it's stretched, which I find, certainly for color calibration, works much better than trying to calibrate the colors in Photoshop after you've had to do some sort of stretch. And I prefer this way, but you know, that's just a preference. So I've opened up the resulting file, and as you can see, it's really quite dark because this is still a linear file. Now, if I look down here where the mouse is, there's a pop-up menu, and this tells Cyril how to display your image. So at the moment, we're displaying it as a linear, which is as it comes out stacked. Typically, what I do is just go to auto stretch, okay, and then it hasn't applied the stretch to it. It's just displaying it if a stretch is applied. So all the data is still linear, but what we're seeing on the screen is a stretched version of it. Yeah, does that make sense? Do you see what I mean? So we've not actually stretched the data, but Cyril is putting a preview on top of it. Now, so up in the top left-hand corner here, you'll see we've got red, green, blue, and then RGB. So we can view the image in full RGB or any of the particular channels. Okay, like that. Now, another quirk of Cyril is that if you do any image processing, you have to have selected any of the channels that's not the RGB one. So if I try and do any sort of processing in here on the RGB channel, it usually says you can't do it. I'm not sure why. It seems a bit weird, but that's the way it works. So unfortunately, you end up looking at either the blue or the green channel or the red channel while you're doing some of this stuff. So next thing I'll do is I'll just crop out the stacking artifacts. We'll get rid of them. So we just select a thing, select an area, right click, crop it, and we're cropped. So I'm going to go back to the RGB channel now. Obviously, we've got a lot of green there because obviously it's we've got twice as many green pixels. Now, the next thing I would do typically now is do what I think is a really powerful feature, which is the photometric color calibration. So what this does is we open up the menu here and we can tell it what this is an image of. So it's NGC 6960. We tell it, so we put in the image, sort of images official classification, hit find. It will then look at a couple of libraries online, catalogs, sorry, and then we can pull back the right ascension and declination for this object. So now Cyril knows what we're looking at. From there, we can tell it what our scope length was and what our pixel size was, because what it will do is it will plate solve. It will then go off to some remote server and say, oh, I know what these stars are. What color are those stars in real life? So, and then it will try to adapt your image to match the color profile of the stars of, because it knows what the color profile of the stars really is. So assuming I've got the figures right, if I click OK, it'll scan for the stars. So we can see over here, it's looking in the catalog. Now it's a little bit touchy on pixel size, and it doesn't always match with what you think your pixel size is. But if you get fairly close, try a little bit either side, it will usually find it. Right, so now we can say it's found the star. So it's looking, it says, oh yeah, I've plate solved this, it matches with what you say. I'll go get the star information and I'll apply that processing to the image. Takes a few seconds because it's going to do it and analyze lots of different stars. So then after that, it's now done your color calibration for you. Now, if you actually look on the Cyril forums, it's more recommended for, well, not narrowband imaging, but I think it does quite a good job. So if you'd have done this in sort of broadband, it'd be even more accurate. But as a first step, I think it does really quite a good job. So I don't have to mess about with green removal or anything like that. It will do it all for me in a single step. And it comes out, I think, with quite a nice balanced image. So that would be my first step in the processing of an image, is do the color calibration. Now don't forget, all the data is still linear. So if I come down to here, go back to the linear view, the data is still linear, so we've not destroyed it by stretching. So we've still got, we just put the auto stretch on to preview it. The next phase I will tend to do then is, depending on the image, is this contrast limited histogram equalization. So this will try and bring out the features while keeping the blacks quite dark. But what I found is on some images it works quite nicely, on other images it just breaks everything. So, and on this one it doesn't seem to do a great deal. But I usually go in, have a bit of a play. If it doesn't do much, I just cancel it, reset. Yeah, so just go back. But what you must do is, if you are going to play with that, is make sure you've cropped out any stacking artifacts, because a black border around the edge will make a real mess of your image when it tries to do the histogram equalization. It's got nice deconvolution functionality in here, which basically is sharpening. So if you look down, if follow the mouse down to the bottom here, we've got some zoom features. So if we click on this one here, it will show the image at 1:1 size. Again, because I'm trying to do something in the RGB, it moans at me. So yeah, let me just cancel that. You can click, really is annoying that. I don't know why they won't let you. what's going on? All right, hang on a minute. Right. It's not, my mouse is not cancelling. Let go, let go. Tell you what, we'll ignore that bit. I'm trying to find the scroll bars to let me scroll around the image, but I'll go back to the full view. Like I say, this is a beta version, and there are some iffy bits. So if I go back to deconvolution, so we can do a bit of sharpening. Again, play with the numbers. I find usually around about 0.5, 0.55. Unfortunately, I'm not going to see this very well unless I zoom in. So I'll zoom in, click apply. You probably can't see it, but it has done a bit of sharpening on the image. Probably not come over on zoom. So I'll go back to there. Median filter, which is essentially software binning. So you can increase your signal to noise ratio, but obviously at the expense of resolution. So again, it might not show up too well across zoom, but if I apply on here, we should see the nebula come a little bit brighter. I don't know if you guys could see that.
Yeah, we saw that.
Yeah, I think zoom, we compress the data so you won't see it well. But obviously, you're doing software bidding, so obviously you're going to lose a bit of resolution, but at the expense of getting some signal to noise. Yeah, you can see a slight difference. This image at this point now, I wouldn't do anything else apart from actually do the final stretch. So I'm now going to go to put it back into linear mode. Come up to image processing again up at the top, and this time do the histogram transformation. They give you a window that's far too small, so I tend to stretch that out a bit. Zoom in a little bit so we can see something. So that's, excuse me, that's the histogram as it stands now in the linear data. What we can do is we can either manipulate it ourselves. There's actually two little triangles here that is really hard to see and hard to grasp. Again, the UI is fairly poor, but what we can do is we say, actually do the auto stretch for me, and I'm going to use that as a starting point. So now you can see these two little triangles here, just above the red and green blobs. I don't know if you can make them out. So we've now got a bit of room where we can grab one of those and start to shift the histogram to do a stretch. Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll play about with that for a little while. Come on, mouse, grab it. Anyway, so assume I'm happy at that point. So it's only when I click apply here now do we go from linear to non-linear data. Now it's at this point now that I would then take that and put it into Photoshop to do the final touches. Yeah, so I like to do the color calibration while the data is still linear, some deconvolution while the data is still linear, and then use Photoshop's powerful curves and all that just to put the final touches to it. But I think just coming out of Cyril, that's not a bad image to start working on within Photoshop. So what I want to show you now is some of the other tools in, but for that I need some slightly different images. So if I go to, so let's grab M51. So this is some horrible data I got quite some time ago. So if again, I've gone into auto stretch preview, we'll go to RGB. Obviously we've got the horrible green. Now, if I come to the blue channel, you see here that there's some banding in this. Can you make that out? So where my cursor is now, the cross, there's a horrible dark band across here. Yeah. Is that visible on Zoom? Yeah.
Yes.
You can see it. Yeah. Now you can probably guess this was taken with a Canon camera, and they do have some banding issues. So, but within Cyril, we have a banding reduction function. So this will help us try and get rid of some of that banding. I don't think it'll get rid of all of it. I tend to take the default, hit apply, and it has reduced it somewhat. Don't know if you can tell there. At any point when you're doing this, you can come up to this top left and there's a undo button. So we can take it back. We can, oh no, that's far too much. Let's go back. We can change the values, hit apply again. Give it a second. That's probably a bit too much. But you can see that it's actually removed some of the banding. Or it's certainly reduced its effect. And it's a case of playing about with a couple of these sliders to try and get the best effect that you can for your given image. But I find that quite useful. So let me go back. And one of the other tools that's quite nice is you can see that there's a gradient in here, yeah, from top left to bottom right. Again, I don't know how well that's coming across on Zoom, but there's quite a gradient. The bottom right hand corner has got a bit of light pollution, and Cyril has a background extraction functionality. So here, what we'll try and do is try and minimize that gradient. So if I move this away out of the image, again, I don't really know the difference between all the degree orders. I tend to stick with the defaults for now until I understand what's going on. So I leave it as the defaults. I hit generate. What it'll do is it will put loads of green blobs all over the place, and they're signifying to Cyril that that's background. Now you can change the tolerance, because in this case here, if you look at a galaxy, it's actually dropped a couple really close to the galaxy and possibly over the top of some of it. If you change the tolerance and drop this down and do generate, it took them out of the wrong place. It's taking them out there. So let me put them back in. So we do a generate, but what we can do is if we right click on any of these, we can take them out ourselves. So we can say that's not background, that's not background. Yeah. So if it happens to go over the top of your galaxy or whatever the object is that you've imaged, we can undo that. Yeah. Or we can add them in as well. So if we think, oh, it's missed one here for whatever reason, we can add our own little marks in, etc. Yeah. So hopefully now, when we hit apply, again, you need to take a little bit of time over this and just play with the values a bit. Ooh, that's not good, is it? That's what happens when you don't take your time a bit. So let me close that. I think that's because I haven't cropped it. Let me go back to there 1 second. So let me just crop it to get rid of the stacking artifacts. Crop. Back up to top image processing, background extraction. All right, I'll just take a couple of these off and we'll try it. Apply that. All right, that's a little bit better on my screen. We've still got the banding, but if you take your time, you can actually get quite good results and get rid of some of that horrible gradient. So then we can go back now to our color calibration, photometric color calibration. Tell it it's M51. And use that. Now, put that back in there. Hopefully it'll accept them figures. So again, it's doing the plate solve, it's finding the stars. It's going to do the color calibration. And if we go to RGB, yeah, we've still got a bit of banding in there. This data isn't particularly good, so it's not going to show up too well. But again, let's crop it down a bit more now. But the reason I chose this data was because it had the horrible banding in. To give an example of the removal. So let me just crop that. Yeah. Go back to RGB, and then there's much better with much better data. You will get much better results. But what I'm going to do is just do the histogram transformation again, do the auto scaling. Grab that. Apply. And even through that, you know, just a quick playing about with that rubbishy data. This one won't let me scroll. Wanted to zoom in on the galaxy, but yeah, beta. No, it's not gonna let me. So, and again, at this point now is where I would then shift off to Photoshop and do the final touches after I've done the stretch to take it from non-linear. That's about all I wanted to go through. That's really about as far as I've got. There is lots of other things in here that I've not really looked at yet. I've no idea why you would want to do Fourier transform, but I think some of that is for more scientific purposes. You can do Rgb compositing in a similar way that APP allows you to mix, make a HOO image from standard RGBs. Unfortunately, I don't have any data on this laptop, but on here you can create an image. You could say in the red layer, I want you to load this file, and then you can load a file into the green and then into the blue layer, and it will create a composite image from those layers. It will align them. It will align the images if they're not aligned. You can do one star or you can do image pattern. And it will make sure the images are aligned, so they don't have to be pre-aligned. And then it will create your RGB image. You can add a luminance layer as well. That's about as far as I've got with it. So I found it frustrating when trying to do things manually, certainly for the stacking. But I think once I found the scripts and how easy they were to use, I've ditched DSS now, and I'm doing all my stacking in here and the initial bit of pre-processing, specifically the color calibration, and then the gradient removal if I need it, and then the initial image stretch to take it from linear to non-linear. And at that point, then, like I say, I moved to Photoshop. So would I recommend it? I would recommend have a play with it, but it is clunky, I think. Certainly the stacking. There's a lot of power in there, and when you go and read the documentation for some of these options, it says this is to apply whatever this function is, but it doesn't really tell you what the function does. You know, so you look at some of these things in this image processing here. I have no idea what half of this does. And when you go read the documentation, it says, hey, yeah, to apply this, just change this value. Yeah, that's fine, but what difference does it make? So it's got some really advanced stuff in there that I'll probably never use, but it's also got some stuff in there that I think is really quite nice. And it's made me wonder whether it's worth buying APP for me. When I used APP, I'm not sure it gave me much more, or certainly 100 odd quid's worth more than what this can give me. So it's made me hold back on buying APP. Yeah. So that's it really. It's a quick run through. I'm going to investigate it more and play about with it more, see if I can figure out some of these more advanced functions. So any questions or anything you want me to clarify?
Yeah. How'd you learn it, Andy? I've had a look on YouTube early on. There's not really that many YouTube tutorials on it, and they don't look very, a lot of them are automated, that automated voice thing. Which
they are, yeah. It's essentially been trial and error. So you're right. There's a couple of videos out there, but they're on the older versions. There's some documentation which isn't too bad, but like I say, it tells you what the function does, not necessarily what it's useful for. The Cyril guys have put out a couple of videos recently. They're not very good, but if you I've sort of watched them as they've moved through the menus to find the sort of order that they're going through to do things in. Because some of these functions work great when it's in linear, when the data's still linear, and other ones work better when after it's been stretched. It's like there's an option in here to do color saturation, so you can crank up the saturation. I didn't realize that that's much better to do after you've done the stretch. So, you know, we can crank that up and that'll bring out, you know, that's brought out more of the color. I was doing it before the stretch and thinking, well, this doesn't work very well, you know. So it has been a lot of trial and error, reading, going onto the forums, and I'm sure I'm still doing things wrong because, like I say, it's hard to get the information. But I've been quite pleased with some of the results. I think it comes out with a nice result here, which I could take to Photoshop. Yeah.
Let's not forget, guys, that this is, you know, complicated stuff. It really is. And when you get to this level of image processing, you know, there's all these things that I don't think there's one person that knows what the whole program does apart from the author. But it's great that Andy's given us a sort of overview of what it's like. I mean, I'm interested in the fact that I like the color calibration. I think that's great to be able to pull out colors from a known database of stars using plate solving. And I was wondering, is it possible to simply put one of your images into it, not do any processing other than just the color calibration?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you can just you can pull any fits or any raw in, I think. If not, you can soon convert it to a fit using the conversion tab, and then just pull any image in.
So because it's a free program, it could be worth having for that feature alone.
Yeah, exactly.
To do that.
But you do need to know, obviously you need to know the focal length that you took the image with and the pixel resolution of your image. But what I find is, well, you might need to just vary them values a little bit either side for it to actually do the plate solve and pull it in. But yeah, you can drop any image in. It doesn't have to have been stacked through Cyril at all.
Like I said before, it really is combining several programs into one, this, because you've got the stacking side of it, which is the DSS side of it, and then you've got the image processing side of it, which is possibly the Registack side of it. I mean, it will take videos. That's in Cyril to you know, like PIPP does, and then it will stack them, and you can do it all in one program.
Yeah, I've never done anything with the videos, but I know some planetary guys are using it. How good it is for that, I'm not sure, but it does work on video files as well as fits and raws.
I think, like you said earlier, the power of this is in those scripts. Yes,
I can show you a script as well. It's not they're nothing too scary. There's essentially, if you go to their website, there's a list of the commands that it will obey, and essentially what they are is just a line of parameters which map to the click boxes, the check boxes you've got in the UI. But if I don't know if you can see this too well, but it's just a series of commands. So this tells it to use the biases directory. So if you wanted to put your biases in a different folder, you would just change this value around here. But then you're saying, in this example, convert any files you find in that folder and put them into a folder called process. Then swap to that folder and then do the stack. So that those few lines will actually convert your biases into fits and stack them with the given parameters. Then it does the same for the flat file, so it converts the flat files, puts them into this process folder, which is like its working folder. And here's one of the clever bits is this says now pre-process the flat files with this bias stack file, and that's the file that was generated just a few lines above. So at this point now you've done your biases, you've done your pre-processed flats. So then your next statement just says, right now them pre-processed flats, just stack them. Yeah. And the script just goes through essentially what I was going through on them tabs. And that's it, that's the whole thing. And you can write your own. There is full documentation on all these different commands, but they provide you with a standard set which covers just about all all the most common things that certainly I've needed to use. I don't know about the planetary and the video stuff, but there's a full set for one-shot cores and a full set for mono. So once I found that, then I suddenly thought, okay, this is now much easier to use than trying to use their horrible interface. And I was quite surprised at how quick it was. And then obviously I found the other tools.
Just out of interest, what did you shoot your Veil Nebula with?
The Veil, that was self-modded 60D Canon on a Esprit 100. Let me go back to it. Oh yeah, I didn't save the stack, did I? So I didn't save the processing. I thought I'd do the Veil because Rick set a good precedent doing his Veil. Yeah, sorry, I didn't save the version. That's the point. Another bad thing is I did all that pre-processing on that file. I went and opened another file, and at no point did it say, "You've made changes to this. Do you want to save it?" You know, so you can get frustrating.
Has that got a narrowband filter?
Yeah, sorry, yeah, it's got the Optilong L Enhance narrowband filter on. Let me just do the color calibration again, so you can see it a bit.
I had a quick question. So if you're using a narrowband filter and then doing photometric color calibration,
yeah,
does that not pose an issue because obviously the filter is trying to do that work to let the specific signal through, and then if you try and color calibrate as per some sort of plate solving software, it just seems like it would potentially cancel out some of the hard work that the filter's done.
I don't think it cancels it out, but like I said earlier, that the serial guys do say that this photometric is really designed for broadband images, broadband imaging.
Yeah, that would make sense.
But what I found is that it actually doesn't do too bad a job, even when, you know, even on a more or less a narrowband image this way. Right. Okay, that's because I haven't cropped. What I didn't show you actually is there is a second way of doing the color balancing, which is if you come to color calibration here and then just do color calibration, we can select areas of the image and tell it what it is. So typically they seem to recommend doing this in the histogram view. So what we're going to do here is we're going to select a bit of the background and try and get a bit that hasn't got too many stars in. Again, if I can zoom in properly, on my main PC, I've got a later version than this. So I'm going to select a little bit here, which is in theory should be background. That's got a few stars in. Yeah. Come over here and say, right, background neutralization. Oh, sorry, use current. I've got to tell it to use the bit I've just selected. Background neutralization. So that should then sort out the background a little bit. And then we can come down to here, this highlighted, there's more highlights. Select a bit of that. So use current. That's telling it that this is the highlight area. Hit apply. Now let's see what sort of job it's done here. Brilliant. That's basically because I haven't got a clean bit of background to click on. But if you've got some nice cleanish background areas where you can get right in, that's another way of doing it. I thought it'd do a better job than that, to be fair. But
Andy,
yeah,
while you're on about color calibration, is it worth mentioning? I know it's an APT issue more than a Cyril. Is it worth mentioning the row header problems?
That's only going to be a problem if anybody's been using a beta version of APT. I don't know. Okay. I don't know whether you guys are aware, but there's a new FITS header that came out that people are starting to use called row order. And what happened is I was trying to get APT to work with my R5 camera, and I was talking to the developers, and I was using a beta version. And in the beta version, in the FITS files, yes. So in the FITS headers, it was putting in something called row order. and it's telling it where the data actually starts. And by default, it was telling it to start in the bottom left-hand corner. When Cyril read it, it then deciphered the information from the bottom left-hand corner, but actually the drivers were writing the data to the top left-hand corner. So essentially, we ended up with purple pictures. So I had a chat with the developers, and they've put it behind a flag. So it shouldn't be an issue for anybody, Russ, unless they were using a version of APT that was a beta version.
This came up in Pix Insight as well, and it was actually there's an organisation that is involved in labelling some of the FITS files, and basically they changed their convention, and overnight, overnight it depends, as you say, whether it reads from the bottom up or top down.
Yeah.
But a lot of what was traditionally an RGB file was being misread. But
mine were coming out as GGR or something weird.
Yeah.
And it was,
But I think most of the programs have now corrected for that. But it was actually an external organisation that just changed their system.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because Cyril put a flag in. No, sorry, Pix Insight put a flag in, so you could say basically ignore it, didn't you? Couldn't you? Well, Cyril doesn't have that flag, but APT have now put it into their side of it, so we can say yes, write this value, or don't. So, and by default, it's turned off now. So it was an issue that I got a new camera, took a lot of images, and everything came out purple. And I thought, what the hell's going on here? It took me a while to get to the bottom of it. But yeah, sorry. I will. Any other questions?
I had one more question just about this metric color calibration. So does it color calibrate, or does it color calibrate the DSO as well? Or
yes. So what it essentially tries to do, it will. Whether it takes the DSO into account, I'm not 100% sure. I don't think it does. I think it's based off the stars that it's known. So I'm sure there will be occasions where it does a pretty poor job, especially if you're using narrowband. But if you're using broadband, then it should be quite good. But to be fair, all the ones I've tried it on, it's done quite a good job. And that's using a narrowband filter. You know, if it doesn't work, then you just you fall back to your sort of old ways of doing it. I don't know if I've got a better image I could show the manual way of doing it on. Let me.
Seems like a good tool. Me and Russ have had quite a few conversations about star color with narrowband filters and how you struggle with it. I was just thinking, you know, if you can bypass the need to take separate RGB stars and just use this photometric color calibration with a narrowband filter, it might just be a good option.
Let's try. So this is the Wizard Nebula, again, taken with the Optolong. Does anybody know what the NGC number of Wizard is? God. Oh, you might know it. Hang on. Wizard. Let me find it. Oh, hell. Now, anyway. Just see if I can do the manual color calibration. So if I come into color calibration and choose this, let's go to.
It might be 7380, Andy.
7380.
That's correct. NGC 7380.
Yeah. Okay, let's try it with the. Let's do the photometric. I think what I'm finding with all these tools is they've all got bits in them that are really good and do it better than the other tools. So I think we're going to end up using most of the tools that are available. NGC 7380. I'll find that. Select it. So I don't know if you can see it here. So it's chosen 480 stars that it's going to try and do. It's going to try and match against. So it knows the correct colors for those stars. It will try and apply that a color calibration that will bring you those stars closer to that. I haven't found it really screw anything up. You might not get perfect results, but I haven't found it really mess anything up too badly. So if I go back to the RGB now. Yeah, see, and I don't think that's too bad. You're never going to get perfect star colors with a narrowband filters, but I don't think that does too bad a job.
I'm presuming you need an internet connection for live plate solving. It's not got a plate solving built in it, has it?
It's got the plate solver built in, but obviously it needs it to look up the star catalogues. So I think the plate solver is inside it. I think. I'm not sure.
But it's got the connection to reference.
Yeah, you will need an internet connection for that. Yeah, yeah, you will. Yeah. So it's. I find it an interesting tool. It's not perfect by any means, but it has. I think it's got some quite nice features in there that are worth investigating. I'm going to play about with it a bit more. It has sort of put me off buying APP for a while. I might change my mind, and I'm going to try a trial of PixInsight next, I think, and just see how I get on with that. But if you're interested, have a play with it. Any questions? Feel free to give me a shout. I'll tell you what I found out. And
questions from anybody? No. Right. Well, thanks very much, Andy. That's been a lightning fast tour of that. It's a lot to take.
Yeah.
I don't know whether everybody's been totally au fait with everything you were talking about, but just a page full of notes here. So
yeah, there is a lot in there, and it is quite complicated. So I just wanted to go through the bits I use.
Yeah.
To start with.
I think definitely starting with scripts right from the beginning. Can I just say hello to Des? Des seems to have appeared since we were. Can you hear us, Des? He's in the dark somewhere. He must be in his Astro dome somewhere. Yeah, so obviously these programs are complicated, and PixInsight is even more complicated, as Mark will verify. But you can take snippets of all of them and do bits of them. I mean, DSS is simple. Yeah. It does the stacking for you largely by just providing the files. But you still have to go on from there and do more processing to get the results you want. And I've been interested in that. I think I might have another go at it. I had a go when it was in its early days. It is a bit clunky.
Yeah, it is.
Somebody said to me, actually, didn't say to me, it was on a website, that they actually weren't terribly happy with the stacking that Cyril did. And they actually stacked in DSS and brought the stacked image into Cyril to use the processing features. So
right, okay.
They said they were getting some artifacts occasionally with Cyril stacking. Don't know whether you've ever found that.
No, I've not seen that. I obviously get the stacking artifacts around the edge, but you would anyway. But I've not noticed any. No.
No.
But again, it's come on a lot.
Perhaps early versions. Perhaps perhaps it's.
Yeah, possibly.
The trouble with a lot of videos is, and this is true of APP as well, is a lot of the videos are using previous versions that are out of date, and the interfaces have changed. So when you try and follow a tutorial, you can't follow it exactly because they're using an outmoded interface, and it can be hard to work out where the new things have been put. But the other problem with Cyril is it's French, and a lot of the tutorials are very French in terms of Inspector Clouseau French.
Yeah, they admit that their accents are very thick, aren't they? And it's hard to follow them.
One of those things. Anyway, Des has joined us in the lights. He's come out of his shed. You all right, Des? Turn your mic on, Des. Turn your mic on. Let's hear you. You all right?
Can you hear me? Is that it?
Yeah, got you. Can hear you now.
Yeah, you can hear me.
Did you manage?
I tried it on my Mac.
Sorry?
I tried to get on my Mac. I tried to get on my Mac earlier, but it wouldn't have it. It was the sound. It was telling me to naff off, so I had to go on my phone.
Right. Well, thanks very much, Andy. Appreciate that.
Not a problem.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Is interested in doing presentations, just get in touch with me, because it's nice to have a variety of people doing different things, even if they're only very, very simple. And I've got a very, very simple one that I'm going to do now. So I'll keep it simple. Keep it simple, stupid is the actual buzzword. Maybe some of you know that on Saturday this week, there's going to be an International Space Station pass in front of the sun. Now, the first thing to say is that if you have any inclination to want to actually take a picture of that, you must have a solar filter. So don't try it any other way. But getting a picture in front of the moon's quite easy. And the principle is the same. So I'm going to show you the website that I use to find the predictions, and just quickly show you what you can do to try and plan. If you want to try and take a picture of the ISS passing in front of the moon, you can try that. We tried it early this week, and Dane managed to get a bit of video, didn't he?
It was so fast, wasn't it? Just zoom past.
Yeah. I'm sorry Dane isn't with us tonight because he's watching these overpaid young men run around in their pajamas kicking a pig's bladder around. Anyway, I'm going to switch over to my screen now and show you what's called the Iss Transit Finder, and maybe some of you will have a go of it on Saturday this week. See if I can do this. Right, can you actually see that Google page?
Yep.
Yeah. So if you just go into Google and type in ISS Transit Finder, and of course this will be in the recording as well, and then click on it, what it finds, you actually get this screen here, which the first thing you want to do is to set up your location. Now, usually it works with auto detect, okay? But if it doesn't work with auto detect, you actually can click on select from map, and then it will find where you are. You can close these windows down. I can find, okay. And you can zoom in. Unfortunately, I'm getting part of my things covered up by faces. So you can zoom into where you are. Look, that's where I am in Tilsley. Right. So you actually can then put on the map exactly where you are. And when you come back to here, you just scroll down to this position. Now, the dates, they're American. Oh, it's gone the right way around this time. That's funny. 2nd of the 12th. When I've been putting these in, they were in the reversed American format before, but it seems to have put them incorrectly this time for me. Anyway, so that's going to look from today till the 22nd. And it's good to put a big number in here for the kilometers, because it'll give you a wide band that it's looking for. So if I click on calculate now, providing I've got a decent connection. Okay, so it's brought up when the next lunar and solar transit are. And you can see it's on Saturday. There's the American date format. Okay, at 13:16, it's a solar transit, this one. Tells you all the information you want to know. Down the bottom there, it says how long it's going to be. Now, for me, in my current position, it's just skirting the bottom of the sun here. Okay, and it only lasts 1.64 seconds, so it's very, very quick. Okay, so if you're going to go to show on map, you actually can get a map of its actual pass here. So this pink diagonal line is where people will actually see the ISS passing in front of the sun. And again, if I zoom into this, move it around a bit, you can see where I am there in Tilsley. And can you make out that central line, slightly darker reddish? Can you see the central line? Yeah. That is what you'd call the totality. That middle line down there is where the best position is to actually get it cutting the sun or the moon in half. So you get the maximum amount of time. So you can actually plan where to go by looking on this map here and deciding, well, I could go to Carrington or I could go to Old Trafford somewhere, and then I'd be in the maximum position. And
well, I'd be all right if I had a solar filter.
Get out to Rother Valley and buy some foil and make one. That's what we did for the Mercury transit.
I'm in work all week.
Oh,
I'd miss the transit. I'd miss the transit driving up to Rother Valley and back.
Anyway, yeah, you'd be all right there, wouldn't you? So I'm thinking, well, here I'm going to get like 1.64 seconds. If I was over here, I'd get over 2 seconds. Not much difference, but a bit longer time. And I just thought I'd show you that because it does that not only for the sun, but also for the moon. And the moon is a far safer one to have a try of this. So I just thought I'd show you that very quickly. It's called isstransitfinder.com. You put in your coordinates and it tells you. So you can see the next passes down here. They're all they're passes, but they're missing the moon. Okay. And I think, you know, I think you can only go up to a month in advance to actually find if it's going to pass anywhere near the moon from the date you are now. So is that of some interest to some people? No?
Yeah, definitely.
For heaven's sake, don't try and take a photograph of the sun, please, unless you've got the filter. I've got to keep saying that. Anyway, I'm going to stop sharing that now. You'll be able to have another look at that on the video. So I think now it's just really time to have a little chat, if anybody wants to have a chat before we sign off. Can I just say it's really a really good turnout tonight. How many people have we got? 9 participants. I think maybe somebody's left. Hopefully one day we'll actually get to meet in person somewhere. Perhaps on the Wirral, Jess. Maybe we'll all come out to the Wirral and do some stargazing.
Yeah, maybe. That'd be brilliant.
Yes, you can get the kettle on.
I've got a big back garden, so we can all set up our kit out there.
Is it dark though? Is it dark?
Can be sometimes. They've just started installing all of those. Do you know those new like bright white lampposts around our area? So all like the really low light orange ones are gone now, which is annoying.
Right.
But I've got the beach literally two minutes down the road, which is where I took my picture of the comet, which was perfect conditions. It was quite dark there. But yeah, I do need to get out to some really dark skies and hold the telescope.
You're not that far from nipping into North Wales if you really wanted to, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I was going to mention, I mean, the bulk of us are based around Leigh and Wigan. That's why it's called the Leigh Astro Group. But we know we're wilder afield now. We're doing outreach work to Lincoln, so where all those pagans live. I'm wondering whether with this new tier system and the rule of 6, we could have a meeting, because 6 people can meet outdoors. And I was wondering over the Christmas period if there happened to be any guarantee of maybe a night or 2 that was clear, whether we might be interested in going out. What do we think?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah,
I would.
Yeah, I'd vote for that. It depends, obviously, where.
Yeah, well, our local place to go is probably the Forest of Bowland. Because that's the darkest place nearest to us, and even that's not dead dark. I mean, the best nearest place for us is probably Dumfries and Galloway, but that's 2 hours away. How about in Lincolnshire, Russ? What have you got in Lincolnshire? Dark skies area, because you seem to get some good shots there.
I'm in about Borsal 4. I'm also way out in the sticks, so I've got no major towns or cities anywhere close, really. The nearest one is probably Lincoln, about 20 miles away.
Right.
So it's not too bad. I think it's worse up where.
Whereabouts are you then, Russ?
In the Wolds, I'm about 5 miles north of Horncastle.
Oh, all right, yeah. I know Horncastle.
Yeah, I'm just north of there. Yeah.
All right. I do. My other hobby is metal detecting.
All right, yeah.
Oh, I love that.
All over Lincoln.
Yeah. They're often in the fields around our house. Might even be you. I don't know.
No, I've not been over to Lincoln for a while. More Newark.
All right, yeah. No, they're always, because where we live is quite close to an old Roman settlement.
Yeah.
So they're always trying to find Roman stuff, I guess. So, but yeah, that's where we are. But the skies are normally pretty good. I think I'm better off than Andy. Andy gets a bit of light pollution up where he is. But.
Yeah, I'm just outside Scunthorpe, so I get all the crap from them.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, can't be as bad as me. I'm in Bortley, right on top of the Trafford Centre.
Mine's Ball 5, so.
Yeah, I mean, my pictures turn out green, and I mean green because of the amount of light. So
that's a bit like mine, actually. Mine turned out a bit green.
Yeah. I'm getting there though. As I say, just not had many clear nights to be able to get out and do any imaging. By the time I've set up, sorted it all out, the clouds rolling.
Same here.
Same as me.
Occupational.
As soon as I mentioned
averages
telescope,
work.
all out.
Yeah.
A lot
Mark,
of averages should be
Mark's
great.
just found a new book for us that he's put on the WhatsApp group, which is about cloud spotting. A lot easier.
There you go. Cracked up. Go on.
We still there?
There, you're back. Yeah, you're back.
Yeah. Right. I don't know whether I've got anything else to say, really. I mean, obviously, we can arrange a meeting if we've got a. I mean, I'm really looking at a spot where it's got guaranteed night of clear sky, not cloud dodging.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean, when I first started last year, this is how I got in touch with you. I mean, this time of the year, sort of like coming up December, January, February, we were getting some really good clear skies for long periods. But whereas like up to now, absolutely dreadful. Stop buying stuff, people.
Yeah, that's Russ's fault.
Is it?
Oh, it's blame Russ, is it?
Well, a little birdie tells me that Rick's bought a new telescope, so I'm not the one to blame. Not now.
Ooh, which one have you bought, Rick?
I just bought a new refractor. It's coming from Cyprus, actually, so it'll be here in a few days / weeks, who knows. But I sold
I was going to say he's going to have to suffer the horrors of being scopeless again, but of course he's got his Dobsonian as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I have got that, yeah. And my my Eva Star is going to be getting shipped on Friday, so I managed to sell that. So that's going to a guy down south near Croydon.
Like I said, unless it's a clear sky that night, then it'll be Saturday.
Yeah. No, I've got to say, Rick, some of your pictures are absolutely amazing, mate.
Oh,
good.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think everyone in the group has got a good set of photos. I think Russ's Horsehead was the last week.
That was phenomenal.
That was a really good,
really
good one. I was saying that Russ has got quite a unique workflow that he uses in Photoshop, in which he uses these luminosity layers. So I mentioned to Russ that it might be worth him showing us that at one point, because I think it adds a lot of depth to the photo, and we were having a chat about that. So
would you do that for us, Russ?
I'm not a good teacher.
I'm sorry to dob you in it.
yeah, thanks, mate.
Too late. Well, I'll rearrange the date now.
He's a very good teacher. Don't let him tell you otherwise.
Oh, that's so unfair. I'll see what I can come up with. Unfortunately, all my photo editing software isn't on the computer, on this computer, so I might have to jig things around a bit. But I'll have a think.
I've got notes on like how many I've done. You should see me folders. I'm actually in the process of buying a new laptop because my other one's just breaking.
Yeah.
So any advice on best laptops going out there, let me know.
Well, Rick's your laptop. In fact, if you want anything second-hand, Rick is your man.
Hey, Rick, let me know next time you're selling stuff.
I will do.
No,
I've been having a buying spree while these clouds have been out.
He's always got an eye on the pulse of eBay and Facebook Marketplace, and you know.
I am very bad for that, to be honest. I will admit that.
He's good at destructive testing as well.
Yeah.
What with telescopes and Ray?
Yeah.
And iPads and. Don't mention the iPad. Don't mention it.
I have a habit of breaking things that are not mine, so everything that I've broken is not been mine yet.
Is she speaking to you yet?
Sorry?
Is she speaking to you yet?
No, she's upstairs sulking still.
You broke her iPad last week.
I did. I was taking flat frames when it was balanced on the top of the scope, and I'm sure I had the RA exactly rotated 90 degrees, and I thought it was bang on, but it obviously wasn't, and it fell from whatever 2 meters onto the concrete. It was my own fault, to be honest. So it's in the repair shop at the moment.
Good.
Mine's an iPad Mini. I just stuck a box on top of it while I was doing me flats, so it didn't fall off.
Yeah. I think I need to get one of those. Do you know the kids' cases where they're like really hard, wearing and the big handles on them, and you can throw them from the top of the Eiffel Tower and it'll be fine.
Yeah,
I'll get one of those.
You could buy that for Myra for Christmas. I'm sure she'd really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Rick recently engaged, by the way. It's his fiance now.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That was before he broke the laptop.
Yeah.
Well.
Right.
Well, it's been good to catch up with you.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'll see you over Facebook and that anyway, mate.
Yeah,
so, no, it's been good.
Yeah.
Sweating me conkers off here. The heating's on. It's like a furnace.
Right.
That's why I'm doing this. I'm dripping.
And on that, I think we might call it a day. So thanks very much, everybody.
People.
Great to see you. Hope to see you all next time. And Russ's presentation will be on the 6th of January, which is my birthday. So. I'll be in touch with Russ and see if you can manage something, because it would be great to see a different way of working in Photoshop. Do you use Photoshop, Jess?
I haven't. I've used a bit of Lightroom on my phone, but that's as far as it's gone. I don't think my laptop will take any more downloading because I've obviously got Deep Sky Stacker, I've got Pip, Auto Stacker, GIMP, so I've got a few softwares on there.
The GIMP's pretty similar in many ways to Photoshop, and if it runs that, I'm sure things can be applied to the GIMP that you do in Photoshop.
Yeah. But yeah, Will, thank you very much for having me, guys. It's been brilliant. Learned quite a lot there.
Great stuff. Okay, shall we say good night?
Yeah.
Okay, people.
Night.
Thanks a lot, guys.